concept too.
Okay. I want to segue a little bit into Dad's business career. So if we can pick up, let's say you've come back from Norway, you've married Mom,
Okay,
and now you're trying to make a living. Can you pick it up from there?
Okay, my first job.
Post office, wasn't it?
No,
Yeah,
no,
wasn't
no,
it
no,
post
no.
office?
That was I was up in the world when I got to the post.
Yeah.
I was still kind of new things on campus, and right near the Kaufman Union, there was a big sort of a science research center, and they were raising hybrid mice that were particularly prone to breast cancer.
Right.
And my job was a mouse breeder.
Okay, yeah.
I'd find the female mice and line them up with one male and 5 females, and then I'd have to get the babies when they were born and be sure they got nursed. I mean, my whole job was pawing around with mice.
Right. Okay.
And that was so. And when I look back on it, I think that's the last real 9 to 5 punch your clock kind of job I ever had. Because I wanted to go into the stock brokerage business, and I was always interested. I was reading like mad, so I was relatively, even though I was just a young kid, I was really knowledgeable in my own sort of way. So I saw a nice ad for a brokerage firm, and a New York Stock Exchange firm. Went in, took the test, and got hired. And I'm trying to think of the name, but it wasn't Piper Jaffray, but it was of that caliber, but smaller. And I was working away, starting to sign letters I was sending out to friends and relatives, and blah blah blah. And one day, a managing partner walked in to our office, which was right downtown, I can't remember where now, but something in the First National Bank building. This managing partner, or new partner, I shouldn't say managing, but came in, and he was probably up in his 40s or something, and he said to the people that was running the office when I was there, what's that guy doing over there? Oh, that's John Stacy. He's our we hired him. He got the highest test on the entrance exam we've had since we've been here. I did. He said, I heard this later. He said, fire him. and the question is, why fire him? Nobody's going to trust him. Looks too young.
Okay.
I mean, it's true.
You were pretty young.
I was pretty young. I was probably about 19, and I probably shaved about twice a week if need be. I was well dressed, but I looked like I just graduated from grade school or something.
You're still
or
growing
high
into your
school.
suit jacket.
I still look like maybe just a high school kid.
Yeah.
And he was right. So I went home and I was very distressed. And this is, I give your mother credit. She bucked me up. She says, "Don't worry about it. Just go back to the want ads and look for something." So I went in the want ads to look for something, and I found this one ad being run by an employment agency, which is one cut down because now you have to pay a fee.
Yeah, right.
So I signed, but I still went in and to this company called Craig Hallam, and ended up meeting Bob White, who was another one of these trust funder type Wood Hill Country Club guys, who was probably about 8 or 9 years older than me, but he was kind of sales manager of Craig Hallam. He liked me, he hired me, and went to work. And now the joke was that every Christmas party they introduced me as the guy that never got hired.
Right. Okay.
because Jack Robinson, who ended up owning the house that you guys grew up in,
Right. Yeah.
on Harmony Circle, he had never hired me. And Bob White was he was the salesman. He never told Jack Robinson. So according to the rules was, I just showed up and started
working there. It started handling accounts.
It wasn't true, but that's what they thought.
They couldn't find any documents showing that you actually
No,
worked
that
there.
they never was ever really hired. And but the lucky thing was, I mean, they were at the. This is what I keep saying. We're in an era right now. We're in an entrepreneurial era because everything. You're not going to get a good job at General Mills anymore.
Right.
If you can't go out and start something, you better be with other people who can start something, or you're going to have to settle for a 9 to 5 job turning donuts or something. Yeah. But anyway, when I went there, there was a company. Well, first of all, Sperry Univac.
Mm-hmm.
The big computer when I was on the things that were the size of 2 hotel rooms
Yeah.
was done by the Univac company.
Right.
And they had this, and then they merged with the Sperry company, and one had an office in Boston, and the other had an office in New York. It was kind of a weird combination, but they were the big computer company that was working primarily for the U.S. government,
Mhm.
and computers were all designed for government. No
Yeah.
individuals had nothing to do with computers in those days. So, and they were, vacuum tube things that were as big as warehouses,
Mhm.
And anyway, there was one. The Sperry Univac had a bunch of young engineers and business people that were dissatisfied with the dysfunctional nature of this 2-headed monster,
Mhm.
and so a bunch of young guys prevailed upon this Mr. Norris, who was higher up in the organization, to spin away and start a new company.
Mhm.
And Norris didn't really want to do it, but he did. And he was the secret for Control Data, it became.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, Control Data, when they put together Control Data, they needed some money, so they started doing some house parties, like in the rich part of Minneapolis, and get a bunch of 20, 30 couples of rich families together and talk about this computer business. They threw together something where they raised like $500,000, which in those days was a lot of money.
Yeah. People,
And people would put up
respectable
Yeah.
yearly income was like $25,000.
yeah, but then the people that come to these parties could write checks for 10, 20, 30,000.
Right.
So they put a bunch, and they got this company going, Control Data, and right away the U.S. government was so desperate for anything that they got contracts up the wazoo, and and I was not involved in any of the original financing, but by the time I came along, Control Data was technically trading as a public stock, and was the people that put in $1 or $10 had $150 stock now, so. And that led to the spin-off of hundreds of companies, because even though, and everybody was Tronics or something,
Yeah, right.
but so you might just be a machine shop that was making the floorboards for these computers,
Yeah.
grinding out something.
Right.
But you, all of a sudden you're an electronics company. So everything was Tronics, this Tronics, that Tronics.
Yeah, Medtronics and all
Medtronic,
that. Yeah.
and everything had a Tronics on the end of it. And anytime Craig Hallam had a history of fairly well connected. Jack Robinson, that was my boss that never hired me, that I bought the house from. He was friends with the Walker family, and the Walker family in Minneapolis is one of the wealthy ones. The Walker Art Institute and everything.
Right.
And so the Walker family backed him, and whenever he heard of these people would come in with these ideas for Tronics companies, he'd write them up, and and he wouldn't do it. It wasn't just a money machine. He did it sincerely, but he would back these companies. He backed a company called Sheldall, and that was a big packaging thing. That was a very successful. Anyway, I come on board, and there's about 4 or 5 other guys working there. Merrill Anderson, that you well know, he was there well before me. I mean, he way outranked me. I came in, I was the new guy on the street. He'd been there for a whole 3 or 4 months.
Right.
Plus, Merrill had been living in a banker in the banking industry. He knew everybody. I knew nobody, but I got, in a sense, had the same job. So they had the first company we ever had was a company called Washington Scientific Industries, and it was a legitimate company. Had about $1 million in sales and was making like $80,000 a year, but could be having $3 million next year. Blah blah blah. They came out with a new stock, and one of the things in Minneapolis, they would sell stocks for $1.15. They made it work that way, so that would be the right capitalization, presumably, and the company would get the $1, and the brokerage firms would end up splitting the 15 cents somehow. That's kind of how it worked. Anyway, I didn't know anybody. The only person I knew that had any money was one of my bosses, who was a friend of my dad's from the old North High School days, and this was a guy named Harry Zipperman.
Oh yeah, I remember that name.
Who ran
Yeah.
Zips Drug.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And so I was his Johnny Zipperman. He used to use me as a caddy at the Oak Ridge Country Club, and he palmed me off as his son.
Okay.
Just as a joke.
You're right.
And I have still Jewish people in Minneapolis think I'm
Yes,
Johnny
Jews,
Zimmerman.
yeah. A lot of people think that, Dad.
Yes. So I called Harry, and Harry said, okay, well, I'll buy 20,000. Oh, you want 20,000 shares? Yeah. No, nothing nowadays, but that was a lot of money.
Yeah, yeah.
So he trusted me with 20,000, and I got, I got some other people involved. I think my mother bought some stock, and I had some friends from college, and I sold 1,000 shares here, 1,000 shares there, which is only $1,100.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And by the time I got done, I'd gotten my units sold.
your-
Now Merrill Anderson was allocated like 3 or 4 times more than me. 'Cause, I mean, I wasn't really trustworthy to do anything. And of course, he did it too. Damn thing opened at $4.
Oh, wow.
So I could call up Harry and
Just
say,
say, you
Harry,
just tripled
Harry,
your money,
you just
or-
tripled your money. Oh, Johnny, I knew I could trust you.
Quadrupled your money. Yeah.
And the funny thing is, when you guys were young, this is no kidding, and you can ask your mother if you see her next time you see her, I had to take my phone off the hook at night. People
remember
were
that.
calling me to try and buy stock from me. Now can you imagine how and then I got calls from then I got to know John Sellover at the bank, and he loaned me money to buy stock. He just signed a trust certificate. So I couldn't buy the stocks that we were marketing ourselves. That was
Yeah,
the-
no,
but I
that's-
could buy yours. I could know you as another stockbroker.
Right, yeah, I
and
could
make
buy,
an-
oh, yeah, right, you
I could
yeah.
buy yours. So you could sell me hot deals, and I could sell you my hot
Yeah,
deals.
right, now.
That was not illegal.
Okay, yeah.
Probably close to being illegal,
Yeah,
but not exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I had bank loans in those days of $20,000, $30,000, money coming and going, and I got a call one day from the bank, the upstairs, the brokers, the accounting department said, did you lose your paychecks the last couple months? What happened? Oh, I said, I'm sorry. I got it in the top drawer.
Forgot to change.
They just didn't bother.
Yeah.
Got these, checks for $1,200 or something. I'll put, put them in next week.
Right.
So I had about 3 checks I had in cash.
Right.
Now,